We're getting from reactions from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle who are frustrated with the ongoing budget battle and really concerned about potential layoffs.
Joining us to talk more about the looming shutdown, Virginia Representative James Walkinshaw. Thanks so much for being back on Sunrise.
Thanks for having me.
Last time you were just a candidate. Now you're the guy. So it's good to see you. So let's talk about this shutdown, and particularly this news from OMB where they say they're going to be firing federal workers instead of furloughing them. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I read the memo, and to me it was amateurish bluster and BS, quite frankly. It's important to note that the Trump administration has no additional legal authority to fire or conduct mass layoffs of federal workers during a shutdown than they do when the government is open. Federal workers retain their civil service protections during a shutdown. The administration is required by law to follow a lengthy process to conduct a RIF or a widespread firing or layoff. And actually, I think the memo suggested that the administration plans to violate the law because the Anti-Deficiency Act is very clear that the federal government during a shutdown can only do those things that are necessary to preserve life and property or to follow a constitutional duty or responsibility. And the work required by law to conduct a widespread RIF or layoff doesn't meet either of those categories. So they will not legally be able to conduct a widespread layoff of federal workers if there's a shutdown. They might try to break the law, but I think they'll lose in court if they do that.
So, Congressman, we know Democrats are dug in on these Affordable Care Act subsidies. Republicans dug in and saying this is a clean CR. We'll talk about the subsidies at another time. I want to ask if I was your constituent and I came to you and I work for the federal government and I said, Congressman, I'm really worried that I'm going to get furloughed or maybe even lose my job. Please keep the government open. Please just prevent a shutdown so I don't have to be worried about my family and my future. What would you say to that constituent?
Well, I would say, one, the things that I'm fighting for in this funding discussion, you mentioned healthcare and the cuts that are looming to healthcare, which is a real crisis in our community. I was at a community health clinic this week, and they are preparing already for a massive influx of newly uninsured folks in our community because of these cuts. I'm fighting to end those cuts. I'm also fighting for protections for federal workers. We know that federal workers have been under attack for 9 months. The Trump administration has taken the position that they can ignore funding that Congress has appropriated for federal agencies and offices that they don't like, that they can illegally fire federal workers. So I'm fighting for all of those things in this budget debate. But here's the other thing. Democrats, myself included, have said, here's our plan. We're willing to sit down and negotiate a bipartisan agreement. And a negotiation necessarily means some compromise. So we're willing to compromise. The Republicans and President Trump are not even willing to meet to discuss the possibility of a compromise.
But clearly, Congressman, Republicans are also worried about this health thing. They've got a lot of constituents who have benefited from this.
Yes, some have expressed concern about it. They don't seem to feel that it's particularly urgent. They've given kind of vague commitments to address it at some point, but the premium notices are going out now. Or very soon, and people are making those decisions whether to renew their Affordable Care Act insurance or join the ranks of the uninsured. So this is a problem that has to be addressed now. It should have been addressed in the so-called big, beautiful bill, but the Republicans in Washington prioritize tax cuts for the very wealthy over support for health care for working and middle-class families.
Congress, I want to get to some other topics. Last night we had news breaking that former FBI Director James Comey has been indicted for lying to Congress and obstructing a congressional proceeding going to happen in the Eastern District of Virginia. Your thoughts on the president following through what he said in that Truth Social post to Pam Bondi, you need to go after James Comey?
In any previous administration in modern history, this would be a scandal on par with Watergate. Donald Trump has specifically targeted people he perceives to be his political enemies. Career lawyers in the Department of Justice have said there isn't sufficient evidence. The U.S. attorney here in the Eastern District of Virginia that Trump appointed said there wasn't sufficient evidence. The newly appointed U.S. attorney that Trump appointed on an interim basis heard from the career lawyers there that there was not sufficient evidence, and Trump pressured them to move forward with an indictment nonetheless. It is highly disturbing, very troubling. Every American, Democrat, Republican, Independent, should be concerned about the politicization of the Department of Justice under this administration. And their goal is to prevent people, anyone, from speaking out and criticizing Donald Trump. They want to scare all of us to prevent us from criticizing Donald Trump. So I appreciate James Comey speaking up and proclaiming his innocence and looking forward to a trial and not backing down. And all of us have to do that in the face of these attempts of intimidation by the Trump administration.
And quickly, if you don't mind, before we go, I would love to address the Jeffrey Epstein stuff with you. With the swearing in, when it happens, of Adelita Grijalva, there will be 218 necessary votes to force that discharge petition. How quickly do you think she will be sworn in, and how do you see this moving forward?
Well, she should be sworn in immediately, and I faced this after my election. You know, Speaker Johnson swore in 2 Republicans who won special elections the day after their elections, and he basically gavelled in special pro forma sessions of the House to swear them in. So she should be getting sworn in this week. It seems like that's not going to happen, and perhaps it will happen next week. And she will be the 218th signature on the petition, which will force a vote in the House. I believe that vote will pass with all Democrats and a lot of Republicans voting for it, and it will go to the Senate. I think Republican senators will be under a lot of pressure from their own base, of Republican voters and MAGA voters who, feel, as I do, that the American people deserve to know the full truth about Jeffrey Epstein, his crimes, the potential for other folks being involved. We know that Donald Trump is mentioned in the Epstein files. Pam Bondi told him that he's mentioned in the Epstein files. The American people need to know in what context is Donald Trump mentioned in those files.
Thank you so much, Congressman James Walkinshaw. Always a pleasure to have you. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll have a great day.
You too.